Bryan Gardens. It was our Boston Garden, our Maple Leaf Gardens, our Montreal Forum. Bryan Gardens had lights and music. It had stands, it had schedules. It had hockey games and an ice show. It had rink managers. It had a locker room. It had fans. It had just about everything that the great arenas had except a roof. But Bryan Gardens had the sky, and to us, that was the best roof of all. When Bryan Gardens was ready, it was 100 by 50 feet of beautiful ice. And when Bryan Gardens was ready, the whole neighborhood knew. The school bus passed our place going up the hill so everyone could see the ice's glassy surface shining in the sun. The rink is ready, spread from house to house, up and down the road. Everyone was planning to skate. Boys with old hockey sticks and new skates. Girls with freshly sharpened figure skates. Little brothers and sisters with their first skates. Everyone was planning their hours on the ice. But when Bryan Gardens was ready, so were the rules of the rink. These rules were easy to keep at the beginning of the season because everyone was excited to be on the rink again. But it wasn't long before the boys would get impatient waiting for their hockey hour to come. They would put on their skates early and sit on the snowbanks beside the rink. They would watch the girls skate and occasionally toss a puck onto the ice. One of the boys would retrieve the puck with long, winding glides around the figure skaters. It was time to knock on the window for the rink manager. Mom would come to the door of the shed and announce, "An extra 5 minutes for figure skating." When the figure skating hour was over, the boys leapt onto the ice like steers out of pens at a rodeo. They made sudden stops and starts. They smacked pucks against the boards. They circled forward and backwards. Soon they were lost in a tangle of sticks and arms and legs and voices. Meanwhile, the girls were in the shed, taking off their skates. The shed was attached to the house. We could open the kitchen door and be in the locker room. Large elm stumps were scattered about for seats. Skate guards, hockey tape, scraps of rag for wiping blades, an odd mitten, a stray sock lay about the floor. Old skates and extra laces hung from the beams. Battered hockey sticks stood in racks along the sides of the room. Brooms and scrapers stood in one corner, while huge shovels called scoops stood in another. Photos of our skating idols were taped to the walls. The locker room was where we put on our skates and took them off again. It was where we talked about our jumps and spins and figure eights. It was where we planned our ice show and dreamt of being in the Olympics someday. It was also where we argued about whose turn it was to sweep the ice so that it could be ready for flooding. After supper, when we were doing our homework and Mom was putting our youngest brother to bed, Dad would go out to flood the rink. He would spray water over the marks and ruts and holes that had appeared from a day of skating on Bryan Gardens. But first, he would have a short skate of his own. He would do tricks for our little brother who was watching with Mom at the upstairs window. We could hear them laughing harder and harder until we would leave our homework to join them at the window. We crowded close together to watch Dad, and when he was done, we knocked on the window for more. These were some of Dad's tricks. Waltzing around with the ice with a broom, pretending it was his skating partner. Accidentally tripping near the edge of the rink and falling headfirst into a snowbank, then waggling his feet up in the air and emerging with his head covered with snow. Running or walking on his skates right off the rink as if nothing were wrong. Spraying water from the hose up into the air, taking off his cap and holding it under the spray, and pretending to drink the water from his cap. Dad loved flooding the rink. He loved the quiet night, the friendly stars, the clear cold. He wore huge, heavy gloves and a tired, tattered coat with a fur-lined collar pulled up to his hat. When Dad flooded, he grasped the hose as an artist does his brush. He sprayed water over the rink as an artist applies paint to his canvas. He worked for a masterpiece of ice until one night, there it was. Perfect ice. Dad had worked hard and it was done. A 100 by 50-foot surface of perfect ice. No holes, no bumps, no ruts, no scratches. And when Dad had his masterpiece of perfect ice, we knew it was time for a skating party. We had many skating parties at Bryan Gardens, but the best one was when Dad would invite students from the nearby college where he worked. He would make a small bonfire near the rink for roasting marshmallows and warming cold hands. Mom would make a huge pot of cocoa and bowls of popcorn for everyone when they came in from skating. But what we liked best about these parties was that we could skate better than most of our guests. We loved to dodge in and out as some of the college students staggered on skates for the first time or limped along on borrowed skates. When there was a little space between skaters, my sister and I would do a spin to show off. We liked the flirting games of tag and the scary momentum of Crack the Whip. Music was piped out through a loudspeaker from an old record player in the shed. John Philip Sousa marches, Strauss waltzes, Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. We loved skating parties, but there was something we loved even more. It was a late night skate. After homework was done, after Dad had flooded, after lights were out in neighbors' houses, my sister and I would sometimes go out for a skate. Late night skates were more exciting than daytime skates. We were alone with our dreams. We would work on our figure eights. We would work on our jumps and spins. We would put on music and pretend we were skating before crowds in a great stadium. We would try out moves that we'd seen figure skaters doing on television or in a picture in the newspaper. We were planning and practicing for some distant Olympics. We also were planning and practicing for